Hey everybody, this is Eric Enge, connecting with you from Falmouth, Massachusetts. So not my normal location, but my normal location is almost never my normal location these days, whatever that means. Really pleased to have Jabez LeBret here on the show with me. Jabez is an accomplished industry veteran, keynote speaker, really well known in the legal space in terms of supporting people with digital marketing advice, and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. Jabez, say hi.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to this presentation. It's going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we have this idea that it's a good idea to focus on a specific niche in your industry. And we've agreed, by the way, people, to disagree on the pronunciation of niche. So Jabez is going to continually mispronounce it niche, and I'm going to continue to pronounce it correctly as niche. He might take a different position on that statement. But anyway, we have this notion that a niche is a really important thing to establish. And to me, the way I think about it, just to kind of get the conversation going, is you have this thing going on where no matter what market you're in, it's hyper competitive. There's tons of people that you're competing with, and if you try to do everything at once, you're really going to dilute your efforts. And I think I kind of wrote that up in the intro to this show. But taking that as a starting place, Jabez, you want to expand upon and talk about how you think about all this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around niching or niching. See, niching just doesn't sound as good as niching. I just think that niching, I don't even think niching's a real word, but we're going to use it anyway. There's misconceptions around the concept that niching closes off business, or that you can't expand enough, or you can't grow enough, or you're leaving business on the table. And I think that misconception kind of scares people away from really diving into thinking about, whether selecting a niche is a good idea, what niche they should select, and then how to properly begin to establish roots. And you don't have to stick in just one niche either. And so we talk a lot about developing different product lines specifically in different niches. You might be an agency that has a lot of clients. Each one of those would be a niche that you're focusing on for them if you're doing their marketing efforts. And so having the conversation around effective tactics for developing a niche and how to leverage the fact you're inside a niche, I think is part of the conversation that really is getting missed along the road.
Yeah, I can see that. And for me, I think one of the things that I think about with all this is when you're going out and creating content or doing things to try to promote your business in your particular niche, that you don't want to be producing Me Too content, right? So I always give the example, I've given it for years, about French toast, where if you go Untitled : and then in quotes, how to make French toast, which forces that to be completely inside the title tag, that exact phrase, you still get thousands and thousands of pages, and making French toast is really easy. And so, but the reason why I give that example is that if you're trying to create some content that's going to stand out from the crowd, right, then it's probably going to be good for you to focus in one area and get deeper in that area than anyone else. And that's kind of a good way to begin the process of differentiating yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about going deep into a niche as opposed to starting to widen out your product offering or your information, as you're mentioning, like content. It really starts to play a role in everything. The language that you use. My agency, G&GF, we only work with law firms, and that's it. We only work in the legal industry, and so we're able to start to develop language and verbiage around legal-specific terms that market is used to using. So it makes our communication strategies easier. It makes it helps define who we are easier. It helps us get in front of the right person looking for that specific content easier. because we're not trying to say cast this super wide net to everybody and say somebody please listen to this useful information we have. We're going to people saying, hey, you lawyer, listen to this information we have because it's about you. And it's about really being able to give your audience valuable information, specifically valuable for them, as opposed to that kind of generic-based approach.
Right. Well, and one thing that you mentioned before we went live is we were talking about what conferences you were going to be at soon, and the first thing you said to me is, well, I'm not going to be able to go to many search marketing industry conferences over the next couple of months because this is the season for the conferences in the legal industry, and it's more important for you to get in front of your audience instead of a generic audience and hang out with schleps like me. I think that's exactly what you said, isn't that how you?
Pretty much exactly, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, but the point is that at the first level, it impacts how you choose to engage with your audience, right? And where. So, you mentioned the notion of language, and now I've brought up the notion of venue, right? Already, you're getting some benefits from focus.
It certainly makes it easier to find your target. So obviously first you need to know what your target is, right? And so, you think about building a really good persona well beyond just your basic demographics. Trying to really hone in on, who am I targeting? Where do they go? What do they do? Are they married? Do they have a master's degree? Do they have a college degree? Do they own a dog? Do they golf? Do they fly a lot? I mean, trying to really figure out as much information as you can about the various personas within your specific niche, then helps you be able to discover where they're hanging out. And, are they hanging out on social? Are they hanging out in forums? Are they at live events? Are they reading books, like hardcover books? Or are they reading information online on, periodicals or blogs? All those answers become easier when you've really well defined the persona of who your target is, and niching is exactly that. It is defining it, narrowing it down, and then being able to go deep into a specific area.
Yeah, totally. And so since Stone Temple Consulting in the guise of Mark Traphagen has put this up here, I'll just remind everybody in the audience, we will definitely take questions. In fact, if you wanted to ask specific advice about your particular business and how you might find the right niche for yourself, by all means, feed it your way. We'll try to pull them up and talk about them as we talk about this during the show. So fire them questions along when you got them. So yeah, I do think this notion of being able to target more is a really good thing. And since you did mention it earlier, I want to actually expand on it a little bit. You did mention the notion of language. So, to expand on it, it's the notion that there's going to be different needs, right? So, for example, in the legal profession, there's going to be regulatory issues. There's going to be things that you can't say, right, on your website or in a marketing campaign. You can't guarantee somebody success in a lawsuit, or that their way of incorporating your business will cause their business to grow faster or make claims, right? There's limitations, and there's a context that becomes clearer when you deal with that more focused kind of audience.
Yeah. It helps you begin to, I think, start to create a storyline and a method and strategy for the kind of communications that you're going to be creating. Certainly you mentioned the regulatory issues. Obviously, we used to do marketing for any kind of company. And when we did marketing online for any kind of company, in the hotels, and we had a lady who did horse dressage, a little dancing, horse dancing. And these random companies, and we had to relearn every time the nuances of that market and that clientele to be able to successfully position that company online. And I think that once we begin to say, hey, maybe we should focus in one area and then learn that area really well, it made learning from your mistakes easier. So as we made mistakes, as we grew, it helped us begin to define how to solve our issues and prevent problems in the future. It helped us begin to understand the nuances of that specific area, and it gave us a positioning point as well. Because now that I know the regulatory guidelines in legal, if I'm competing against somebody on a bid that does everybody, I can say, well, you may want to be careful, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, because that person may not understand you as well as I do, because I only work with people like you. And that differentiator carries a lot of advantages with it.
Totally. It makes complete sense. And it's you're really able to see into what their specific needs are. And also, I mean, it can be as simple as size, right? It's easier for you to you just really understand, okay, they're going to have these kinds of resources. I have to package something this way for it to make sense, in your case, for a law firm of your size. You can intuitively and more quickly figure out what kind of program might make more sense to them. I mean, I can imagine that first sales call, you're like, zoom, right into, what the real issues are for them in no time.
And as time moves on and we're looking at, analytics and information as time moves forward, we get to see it across similar types of clientele. And so as an agency providing services, we're able to use the data across the board and say, well, in legal, we know this to be the case. It may not be the case for a dry cleaner, may not be the case for a plumber, but in legal, we know this is how the users are typically interacting because we now have a data set of just legal professionals. And we can use that information to our advantage to make decisions for our clients.
Yeah, totally. So, Jabez, you have your first heckler here. Congratulations for that. He wants to know if you cater to ambulance chasers. So.
Well, we try. We prefer to find as many places that can be as scuzzy or unethical as possible to work with. No, we actually, what's interesting, I'm just kidding. Law firms, it's kind of funny. Sometimes people kind of like give us in jest, like, oh, law firms, like, are you really sure that's a great idea? And jokingly I say, like, well, lawyers are, sometimes they get the bad end of the joke, but when you need one, they're your best friend. We do work with a lot of different kinds of law firms, like adoption attorneys and elder law attorneys. But again, understanding what all of those kind of attorneys' jobs are and their roles and the kind of positions and their clientele really varies from one type of law firm to the next. And we may not have gotten that deeply involved in legal and understanding legal specifically had we not made the decision to cut out the rest of our clients and go specifically towards just the legal only.
Right. You get to encounter many different verticals that way, which would never happen if it weren't for the fact that you had that focus. So we have a question here from Wayne Wymore. Any info on how who we are can help us select our niche?
Yeah, I think that it's important to pick a niche that fits what you're capable of doing or what you're good at or what you're passionate about. I know there was some conversation going on actually before this series started about someone saying, well, I think that you shouldn't go to a niche. I think you should follow your passion. And there certainly is in my opinion, a strong belief around the same idea that, yeah, you should follow your passion, but that doesn't mean there's not a niche there that fits that. But on the other side of that, I think you're foolish if all you do is say, I'm only going to take a job that 100% matches my passion. I have lots of different things in my life that I do and work. Not all of it is the best. I don't love everything I do about my job, but I love most of it, and I'm pretty passionate about it. Am I passionate about legal, like law firms? I find them very intriguing and very interesting and a very perplexing problem to solve. I'm very passionate about digital marketing, very passionate about marketing solutions and complex situations, simplifying complex situations. So that makes the legal niche a good niche for me because that's what they need. They need someone that can simplify the complexities of marketing strategies. And so I was able to find where my passion fits into a niche. Because I'm not a lawyer, I didn't go to law school, I have no intention of going to law school or becoming a lawyer, but that doesn't mean I can't also have a niche and still find my passion at the same time. And so that really came to a defining of who we are. And so my business partner, Mark Homer, and myself really had to sit down at the table and say, what are we really, really good at? What do we know really, really, really well? Map that out, and then that allowed us to say, well, okay, well, which market needs that kind of service? So you might be a high volume, low price point provider, which would then give you a certain direction on the kind of niche to go after, or you might be a very high touch point, very high customer service, very highly involved type of agency, and then that's going to help also dictate which kind of markets you would consider as a viable niche.
Yeah, I think that this. I remember the conversation. The whole business of passion. To me, that should help you in the process of picking your niche, right? So I could say, for example, that I'm passionate about digital marketing, and therefore I need to do everything. But I think that's a little bit misleading. And even within, now you have to go a little further. What parts of digital marketing am I into? Because when I'm passionate about something, that's what's going to drive me to naturally find out more about it than others, put more effort into finding more about it than others might put in, so that I can really start communicating things that other people don't. It's going to stimulate my creativity. It's going to cause me to bring some extra juice that a lot of other people who aren't passionate about that specific segment of digital marketing. And I think this is a really, really good thing, and I think it's something you leverage to help you define that niche.
Yeah, I really just always go back to taking your skill set and then developing a strategy and plan around being able to deliver what you're good at. I love speaking. I really enjoy speaking at events, and I like teaching, and I like educating, and so I speak at about 45 events a year in the legal space, and that's because I really like doing it. And if I hated doing it, then I would probably not make that my go-to-market strategy. I'd probably find a different way to reach our market. But you got to find ways to interject your passion into where it is that you're headed, not just say that I can't go in this direction because I'm not passionate about everything about it.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a great way to think about it. I'm going to pull up another question here. This one, this is from Denver Prophet Jr. I don't know that it's all going to fit. So he blogs about open source tools as it relates to several topics like social media, e-commerce, and the like. Is that still too broad of a reach, or would it be a narrowed focus that solves a problem or introduces a new idea to those mentioned topics?
Yeah, I run into this a lot where I find that people are saying, all right, well, I talk about a really broad topic. Is that in and of itself a niche or not? Is that am I unable to reach in a targeted audience if I'm speaking about these? I talk about all things open source, or all things WordPress, or all things SEO. I talk about everything that has to do with SEO. I would say that's too broad. The idea of niching is being able to develop specific communication strategies designed specifically for a subset or a smaller group of people. Yes, you may be able to target all open source programmers, and maybe that's what your audience is, and that would be like a horizontal niche. And so niches come in two ways. They come vertical and they come horizontal. And so a horizontal niche, an example would be, I only work with CMOs at companies. My only people that I target are CMOs. Now that could be a CMO at a major brand. It could be a CMO of a startup. It could be the CMO of a established, old school newspaper, whatever it is. That's my niche, is CMO, and that's a horizontal. Or vertical would be, I only talk to people who are specifically in the shoe industry, and I only talk to people about shoes, and that's it. And so picking the direction you go on that T is really, I think, the important factor. And so if you're going to go that way, you want to narrow it down. If you're going to go across, you want to narrow it down. So which part of open source do you talk about, or what part of SEO are you really good at, or what? Like you mentioned, digital marketing would be a better example. So instead of saying I do digital marketing for everybody, which part of digital marketing do you own? What part are you really, really, really good at? And I think of like Dennis Yu as a good example of someone who is really good at Facebook. Now, he could say social media, understanding analytics and whatnot is important with social media. He's got website development experience. He could say that, but instead he really focuses in on Facebook. There's an example of someone going broad, but keeping within a narrow subset.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really great that you brought out this notion that a niche can be horizontal too, and it certainly can be, right? So you could be talking about all topics, but addressing in digital marketing, but addressing a specific audience, and that's how you've narrowed it. So you know what the language is to help them understand those issues are, versus you're addressing more audiences, but you're in a very narrow silo of something. Or maybe, you know, depending on the market you're in, you're vertical and a horizontal crossover, and focusing on something much more targeted. It really kind of depends on where you are and the like. But the key is, no matter what you do, and to me, I think this is a really good area to expand upon a little bit too, which is you got to pick something at which you can be successful and get started and get some initial traction. This is why I do think, going back to what we were talking about before, passion is very helpful to this, right? Because you're more likely to be successful in communicating something about something to which you're passionate. But you know, you really want to find that place where you can get that initial traction, cement that, solidify that, really leverage that. And then over time, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Jabez, you can begin to build out a little bit more and expand from there.
You know, this is a perfect thing you're bringing up here, Eric, because I talked to somebody maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and we were sitting on a flight together, and they were like, I've got this idea for this niche that I really want to go after. And they were, you know, they're really passionate about it, and they really wanted to go after this niche. And I started asking them some questions, and we came to uncover that there was 27 possible clientele, and they were all universities. But there was only 27 universities that this person could go after at all. And I was like, well, you can do that. I said, but you need to understand going into it that you have a really limited market availability, and you have 0 market share. So, you know, 10% of 27 is only 2.7, so 2 to 3 potential clients. If you close 10%, which is pretty good, you may want to step back a notch and peel it back a little bit and go a little broader, which is always a challenge when you're niching, is to not get too narrow, but make sure that you've got enough marketplace to play in, you know, which is part of that research and understanding. And then it doesn't mean that it doesn't preclude you from expanding later. And so when we were talking earlier before this got started, you know, I think of like Nordstrom is a good example. You know, I worked at Nordstrom for 8 years in their finance department, and you know, I have a real passion for that company. I think it's a really great built company, and I believe in the way that they offer their services, and it really is a family legacy type of company. You know, they do about $10 billion a year in revenue, billion with a B. They started off as a shoe store that only sold women's shoes, and that's it. And they did it for years, and then they began to expand a little bit more, and they added a little bit more to what they do, and then a little bit more, and they kept going on. I mean, Amazon's another great example of a company that started off as a bookstore online, and that's all that they did, and they got really good at doing that. And then once they got really good at doing that, then they had to make the decision of whether or not they were going to expand into more vertical sideways. Were they going to jump into different silos, or were they just going to go deeper in books or deeper in what they do? You know, and lastly, I'd say like Zappos is a good example of a company that probably could have gone wide, but instead chose to just really kind of hone in on what they were really good at.
They copied Nordstrom's and stayed with shoes.
They did. That's right.
Yeah. Another interesting observation about Amazon that kind of fits into this too, which is probably not the way people usually think about how you can define a niche, is they started by selling stuff that they would essentially drop ship to people, but that they would take possession of and sell. But then they added a broadening where anybody that has something to sell, more or less, can go in there and sign up and become a merchant and and resell stuff through Amazon. So that's an interesting case of a way that someone expanded their business, right?
Yeah, and they went broader by opening up other avenues for people to utilize the platform that they had built.
Right.
And that's a brilliant way to do it. And in fact, my agency is looking into that right now. You know, like who else is complementary in our industry? So in the legal space that deals with law firms, what are other service providers that provide benefits and services or softwares that we don't? And is there a reason why we should be connecting with that person and partnering with them, or possibly cross-selling or and you will find those kinds of relationships easier to build. If you're in a specific niche, it's easier for you to then find who are the other players in that space and then build a connection with those, build a bridge to those other companies that are complementary companies that aren't competitive. And so that's how we go after, you know, strategic alliances, is find someone who offers something that we don't and then say, hey, we've got this audience that you want. Let's talk. And you know, those kind of you know, connections and alliances can be really profitable in the long run.
They can be. You know, it's a great way to look at it. But I'm going to go back to, you were talking about this fellow that you were talking to that had 27 potential targets, because you said rightly that they may want to step back and broaden things. But actually, if you're on day one, right, and you're looking just to get that first anchor client in, then 27 might be plenty, right? I mean,
right.
And gaining 2 or 3, you know, customers or clients out of that might be the way to get started. And you know, I think what this illustrates is that, to some degree, what we're talking about here is you can't possibly do everything well together at once. It doesn't matter how big you are, right?
Yeah.
Google can't do everything well all at once, right? They do more things well than nearly any other business on the planet, but there's still things that they can't get to. So everybody has to make choices. And when you're in that very beginning spot, right, and you're trying to get that first level of traction, you know, I think you do what it takes to get that first level of traction. You might get even more and more focused, not much more broadly than might, as long as there's a reasonable way to expand from there.
And I think that's smart, because there's going to be people on, you know, on the show right now listening that are just starting out. Maybe they're transitioning from a completely other industry or something different, and they're like just starting to get their feet wet. And absolutely, if you are just starting out, narrowing it down to 30 potential people makes your life a lot easier. It's easier to find out who to contact. It's easier to make the marketing material. It's easier to get in touch with those people. Absolutely. Then there's the other side of it, which is going to be the audience listening right now that already has an established agency or business, that already has been serving clients for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, that might be saying, I'm not getting enough profit margin, and I'm not quite seeing that this is really building and growing in the way that I want it to build and grow. And that person, actually, the answer might be to narrow your offering and narrow your target to build a bigger margin and to actually end up growing. And I think that those two things are very different, and you have to know what's your price point, what's your margin, and where are you at in the life cycle of your own business, you know, to really be able to understand what's the right answer for your specific situation. You know, all those things come into play.
Right, and the reason why narrowing your focus can lead to higher margins is because, as Jabez said earlier, you can now leverage a more specialized understanding, so that, you know, you're able to speak to your direct contact in different language than your competition can. You can address and understand the needs of their CMO, their CEO. You're able to plug in a much more deeply integrated way into an organization when the market they're in is the market that you focus on. And those things have value to those people, which is what would allow you to raise your prices to that narrower audience.
And I think, I'm convinced, and it's something that I see across the board constantly, you know, and I end up in conversations a lot with a lot of different business owners and people that run agencies, and they don't charge enough. Most of the people listening to this right now, I guarantee, are not charging enough. and that sometimes raising your prices is a good way to weed out the customers you really don't want and end up with a higher quality customer and a little bit better margin. I know we personally went through this. I'm a big fan of like experience sharing and kind of not just giving advice to people, but saying, hey, I actually learned this the hard way. You know, at our agency, we have basically, our monthly cost to our clients right now has gone up tenfold since we started 4 years ago. And you know, it doesn't happen overnight. We just kept ratcheting it up a little bit more and a little bit more, but it wasn't that the market didn't have room to pay for it. It's that we weren't comfortable charging the amounts that we charge. And yes, our service level has gone up, and that helps. Our offerings have gone up, that helps. But there's still a lot of room analyzing on the premium that you're talking about, which is me being able to say, hey, client, I know you very well and your market very well, and there is a price that you will pay for that kind of almost exclusivity, almost kind of that level of expertise, if you will, and it really helps you establish, as you had mentioned, the ability to charge more just by the fact that you say this is all that I focus on. Right,
totally. So I'm going to pull up another comment here. So from Lee Rickler, I don't know that all fit. So you can also niche down on your niche. There, I did both. For example, I predominantly develop using WordPress. Oh, I lost it. It's showing me again. It does this sometimes. I'm going to just have to read the comments. Sorry, everybody. For example, I predominantly develop using WordPress, but clients mainly use me because I specifically use WordPress as the engine for online applications. For example, strip it right back to its bare essentials. I never use it in the standard way to just build a website. So, and I think this is part of what you were just saying, right? It's this notion of narrowing it down. And Lee, I think if we follow what Jabez was just telling us, this creates a situation where you can charge more because you're doing something so much more specialized.
You know, interesting, and I think that Lee's bringing up a really good point. When you dial back to your value proposition to your prospects and your clients, it's important to remember that they don't speak your language and they don't understand what you do as well as you do. And so I always am constantly reminding myself to communicate in the benefit statements that they want to hear. And so why is that important to them? Not that you necessarily that's what I do, but speak to them in language that says, the reason this is important to you, or this is a benefit to you because of X, Y, and Z, and so you should be doing, I don't know if people are familiar with benefit trees, where basically on one column you write down the features, so all the features of your product, and then you do the benefit of that feature, and then the benefit of that benefit, and then the benefit of that benefit. That last boiled down benefit is how you should be communicating to your niche about what you offer. And that really helps you, it's a good exercise to be going into the benefit of the benefit of the benefit to help you begin to start to simplify the communication, because you know, when it comes to selling or getting people to understand what you do, it's got to be concise and quick, and they only care about how it impacts them. You know, right. We use emotion to buy and logic to justify. So speak on the emotions and benefit side first when you're doing something technical like that.
Right. So an example of a benefit statement that we used here in this show, although it was not a quantified benefit, it was kind of a qualified benefit, which is narrow down your niche and you should be able to charge more. Right. So a crisper statement might be, one of the benefits of our service is that you will reduce your costs by at least 15%. That's a fairly crisp benefit statement. But I really like your notion of the benefit of the benefit of the benefit, because it fits in with an article that I wrote recently and published on Search Engine Watch. And the theme of the article is that it was specific to the SEO industry and trying to sell someone on SEO, but it's generally applicable in any market, is when you're trying to sell somebody on something or get somebody to change their opinion of something or to buy you, 5 slides, 5 minutes, right? And ideally, that's the whole sales story, where the benefit is just one of those slides, and that's it. And it's a highly visual slide with maybe 4 words on it. And this is what it's really about. Is you got to really continually boil these things down into the way that your client or customer is going to understand it. And each type of customer is going to be different. So in my article, one of the things I highlighted, since I was specifically focused on getting an organization to buy into an SEO strategy, but I could just have easily said a content marketing strategy. What you have to say to the CEO is different than what you have to say to the CFO, which is different than the CMO, which is different than the director of marketing, which is different than the CTO. All different. And if you have to talk to all those people, you essentially have to make 5 different pitches, right, to accomplish your mission. So this notion of really boiling it down is a very powerful one.
Well, and there's different personalities, right? So a different kind of person becomes a CFO, a different kind of person becomes a CIO or a CMO, or a different kind of person becomes a lawyer. And then you start to kind of understand what about your niche matters most. What do they care about most? And then you can start developing benefit statements that revolve around and solutions that revolve around what they care about most. And in the legal space, attorneys don't want to waste time on non-billable hours. The big thing for an attorney is, so surprising. If I billed out at that rate, I'd probably be worried about that too. But so they're constantly worried about billable hours, and so on the litigation side particularly. And so one of the things that we work on is saying, hey, we help make sure that things are done properly, so you're not having to spend time fixing things, or spend time editing things, or spend time resolving ethics violations that your marketing agency made, so that you can spend more time on billable hours. And that's a major benefit for them. But that's not the same benefit for someone who runs who's a plumber or a dry cleaner. They just have different things that boil down to the most important things for them. And that just kind of circles back to the whole concept of when you niche and you get to build that persona, inside that persona you get to start to understand what really are their hot buttons, what really presses that market.
Yeah, totally. So, hey, I'm going to share just a comment from Peter Lunn here. He wants to know, these comments aren't sharing properly. Sorry, folks, the comment tracker is a little broken, but I'll read it. He says, benefit trees. That sounds very helpful. Any specific content on that you would recommend, Jabez LeBret? So, if you don't have anything right off the top of your head, Jabez, you can just pop something into the event comments after the show.
Which kind of tree did?
The benefit trees he was talking about.
Benefit tree?
Yeah, just any.
It's actually real easy to do. The benefit tree is a list of your features. So what are the features that you offer? So that could be SEO services, pay-per-click. It could be content marketing, Facebook advertising. Whatever. Just go down and list the actual features of what you offer, and then put 3 columns next to that. And then on each one, you write what's the benefit to Facebook marketing? What's the benefit to that? And then what's the benefit to that? Now, you may have more than one line. So you might have Facebook marketing, Facebook, ads, might have 5 lines, because you may have 5 benefits on the top level to Facebook advertising. So one benefit to Facebook advertising is I can easily target my audience directly on Facebook. Another benefit is it's a place where people spend a lot of time. People spend a lot of hours on Facebook, so that's good. It's very easy to share, so it's a place where my ad can actually get shared. And so those would be top level. What's the benefit to people being able to share your ad? Well, you get free impressions. You get referrals, right? That's like somebody referring you to their friends by saying, "Hey guys, check this out." And so that's how I would start to go about listing out a benefit tree. And I would be more than happy to post something on that later. As well for everyone on here, if that'd be useful.
Okay, great. So now I have a question from Syed Raza. The question is, how important is speed over quality or vice versa? For example, let's say I've discovered a valuable niche and become the front runner online. Then comes the competition. What are some ways we can scale growth to stay ahead of the pack and still maintain quality of content or service?
Well, I mean, that's a tough challenge, right? Because I think it's in the book, The 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing. There's the first two people in, the first two ones into the market to get most of the market share, typically, if they continue on their growth pattern, will retain most of the market share. That has become less the case in the digital world. That book's about 25 years old, 30 years old, so it's kind of lost a little bit of its relevancy, but there's some truth to that. First to market is important. No question about it. I think you have to ask yourself on a scalability question, what kind of investment is it going to take to scale? And resources, that could be hours, time, software, tools that you may need to invest in. And then you have to look at your ROI. So what is our margin going to be on what we're charging? And then that'll help you guide you into the business decision that way. In some cases, so we went really slow to market because we were not new in the legal space in offering digital marketing strategies. So we didn't have to run in because we weren't first. We were trying to cannibalize on other people's market share. You don't always have that opportunity. Sometimes you are first and you want to jump on that. In order to watch out for quality versus quantity, I always try to build things to scale. So specifically always asking myself, if I were to have 1,000% more of this problem, how would I be solving it? So let's say that I had 1,000% more clients. Well, what kind of back-end system would I be using? What kind of CRM would I be using in my company to track all of these people's files? What kind of employee headcount would I need to be able to manage that many? And that's a good exercise to help you keep in the back of your mind kind of an awareness of what scalability is going to mean down the road. And it helps you start off in the right direction on tools, start off in the right direction on resources and the kind of people that you try to hire or contract out to at the beginning, if you're thinking 10 steps down the road as a possibility. And then the moment you get done thinking about that, stop thinking about that and go right back to reality, which is, I have nothing, I'm first to market, I better start rolling this out. And, just that's something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and what's interesting is quality versus quantity thing. There's, I think, a different way of looking at it too, right? Which is that there are people whose niche is that they offer the cheapest, right? Isn't it Walmart that has it used to have the ads with the price things falling down in front of you and the price dropping astronomically low right in front of your face on a TV commercial. They clearly have focused on quantity and price as elements of what they were trying to do, and that's how they differentiated themselves. Or, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the stores now. This is going to nag at me. But these stores where you go in and you buy things in bulk, and they don't necessarily always have everything you want. But it's just like there's like no service. There's just racks up to the ceiling of stuff, and you go in, you pull your stuff off the rack, and again, it's sort of about pricing as opposed to absolutely the best convenience or service or anything of those kinds. So those are other ways that quality versus quantity can play into things. I know for Stone Temple Consulting's perspective, we place a very strong emphasis on trying to turn every situation into a positive one with our clients. And if it isn't going to work out, then we will walk away from them, because it just doesn't make sense to keep pursuing it. So we have a very high focus on quality, and I won't. Look, anybody in business, you're going to have situations where it just doesn't work out that well. You have to live with that, but you can still pick your focus one way or the other, I think.
It's important to learn how to walk away from a deal and how to fire a client. Both of those things are very important lessons and tools to use, and not often, but you do need to be able to do that from a business perspective for certain. From a marketing, if I was marketing my own company, I would go with quality over quantity in my own marketing material. So when it comes to getting out there in my marketplace, if your problem is I'm first to market, do I write a bazillion different articles that are all really kind of crappy just to get massive coverage? I personally have always felt more comfortable getting very good at communicating and really making a nice quality something that I could then hopefully get shared out more often, or hopefully put in front of the press or put in front of someone else on that front. I'm not a big spammy shotgun approach, but hey, it works sometimes. So I'm not saying that doesn't work. It's just not my preference.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I would definitely go down the quality route in terms of your own content marketing campaign. By the way, very helpful comments from the audience. Stone Temple Consulting is reminding me it's Costco or Sam's Club that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
And then Bob Strassel Jr., who's obviously from New England, as you can tell, because he's talking about a place called Spags on Route 9,
Spags,
Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. There aren't a lot of people who know about that, Bob, that's for sure. I'm not outside of New England, that is. But yes, those kinds of places. For other East Coasters, there's also Building 19 in all its various flavors. So all examples of that. Okay, so question from Tom Ralston. How do you turn away those businesses/clients that don't fit into your niche? Are you part of an association or have a list of sources that you can refer them to?
We have a list of I guess you could call them frenemies. Companies that are competitive to us in nature. They do exactly what we do. They're good. Right off the top of my head, I can think of like Attorney Sync, Guy Sagalakis over there, Mike Ramsey. A lot of people on this show probably know Mike Ramsey, Nifty Marketing. They do legal as well. And those are the two go-tos for us for sending people that either aren't the right fit for us. Maybe we've already working with a client in that market, and we're in a contract lock. We can't work with anybody else in that particular market, so we might send them there. But I also found a lower cost provider in my right fit for our service package, that I have a low cost provider that I can then refer them to, and that really helps build a strong relationship over there. And sometimes you want to create a relationship where there's money going back and forth, and sometimes it's just I want to service the person, the prospect that needs the help. I want to make sure they get somewhere that's good, that I can trust. And I would rather, if I'm going to spend 20-30 minutes on the phone with somebody and they're looking for services, and at the end of the call we're not the right fit, I would prefer to send them somewhere that I know is a good fit. And I'm not really as concerned about whether or not I'm getting a commission check off of that personally. For me, it's servicing the market, and I've always learned that has been a really good method for referrals. And that person will talk about it later. Oh my gosh, this guy, he spent all this time and he couldn't hire me, and then he got me connected with this great company over here. Both of them are good options. I'm a fan of that kind of be friends with your competitors in your space.
Well, totally, and also just this notion of just trying to help people who've come to you looking for help, and maybe it's not from you, right? I mean, that's just a really good way to be. I mean, that person might suddenly start sharing your stuff all over social media and be bragging about you and doing great stuff. So it's definitely worth doing. I totally agree. All right, so another one from Bob Strassel Jr. Isn't this really the heart of it? You need to pick a niche where you can grow or at least earn a living or develop a business. So this goes back to what we were talking about before. Just because you pick something doesn't mean you can't move on to something else and shift your focus. And then he brings up one of my favorite two-word phrases, fail fast, which is something that picking up and focusing on a niche allows you to do. Right? You might think that, hey, this is the area that I want to focus for right now, and you go after it, and it isn't happening for you. If you're highly focused, you'll get to that answer quickly and be able to pivot and move on to something else. And I think that's a cool thing.
We went into a mature market, And I think that helped, right? So we went into a market where people were already making money doing what we wanted to do. But our problem was we didn't know how to get to our clientele. And so we failed fast in several attempts at our go-to-market. I mean, we sent out this mailer. Oh my gosh, it was the best mailer ever. First, we sent them their yellow page ad that they had ripped out. We had ripped out of their newspaper in their local city, and then we circled the 7-pack on Google where they weren't ranking, and then we sent them their half-page yellow page ad that they're spending $8,000 a month on, and we said, hey, you should be online. Everybody's online, and then we mailed them a money bag with like dollar bill shredded in it, like a fake dollar bill, and then the next week we mailed them a trash can with the original letter in it that said, you should. Don't throw this opportunity. I mean, it was the cheesiest, worst idea ever, and completely failed. And we got zero response. Literally no one. Like, we sent like 400 of these, no response at all. And we quickly realized direct mail wasn't the right approach. And then we just pivoted on and moved. And so we tested it with 400 mailers, didn't get any response, moved on to the next strategy. So you can fail fast in a lot of different ways. And when you're niched, it makes it a little easier.
I'm experienced at failing fast. I've done a lot of it. It's the slow fails that are very painful and the most hurtful to your business, quite honestly. So I have one more that I'm going to share here from Syed Raza. As a passionate digital marketer and specialist in my niche, how can I engage socially as a subject matter expert without being exposed as a die-hard marketer to my followers and influencers within the niche? Should I maintain multiple social accounts?
I'm against maintaining multiple accounts. I'm a fan of wearing your stripes proudly, but with that said, I am huge on providing value above and beyond and first and foremost. And so what that means for me is, all right, technically would I consider myself an expert in online marketing for law firms? Probably. I mean, there are only so many of us that do this in the world, and yeah, I'm lucky. I've been mentored and trained by some amazing people. I don't go to my market saying that. I go to my market and say, hey, here's some solutions for your problems. Or I'll read on LinkedIn a discussion about an issue that a law firm's having with marketing, and I don't say I can solve that issue for you. I give them the answer to that problem. My business partner and I wrote a book about it, and all we did was we literally wrote down our process, all of our secret sauce. This is what we do from point A with a client all the way through Z, and this is how we get results. And we wrote down everything. We didn't keep anything back. And why? Because we know that our clients, our particular clients, they're not going to go do it, but they appreciate our willingness to share. And you know what? If somebody does take our information and they do go out there and do it and it's successful, and then they come back and they say, oh my gosh, it worked. That's awesome. Like, I think that's a great thing. And the other 9 people aren't going to go do it, are going to come to me and say, hey, can I hire you to do this for me instead? And so I'm a big advocate of contributing first before you have to worry. And then you don't even worry about it. I mean, it really solves that problem of I don't want my market to think I'm marketing to them. Well, don't market to them. Solve their problems, give them information, provide value to them, and they won't see you as someone that's trying to market to them. It may on occasion. I got called out once from somebody thinking that I was marketing, and I tried not to take it personally, but it might or might not happen. But in the long run, I think you're better off.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And honestly, you can wonder, well, I mean, how are these people getting value from all this time that they're reading, all these ideas of how to do things, and are those articles that that you and I both put out there in those presentations we both do, are people getting value from that? And you need to realize that even though we will literally get up there and try to lay out the whole formula, a lot of what's going on is people are learning how to think about the problem from what we're presenting, and that by itself is an enormous value, right? And just an example of this is we spend a lot of time trying to get large enterprises to understand how to engage in content marketing and do the right things in content marketing. And we have to touch upon many different departments, and it can be a nightmare and take years to be successful. But the whole process is getting them to understand what the picture looks like. And that puts them in a better position to do decision making about what to do. And quite frankly, nearly all the time they come around and ask us to go help them execute it. So there's really very little downside to having that way of giving away, you know, everything you know, basically.
And when your market sees you as a valuable resource, then it opens up doors that may not have been opened before. And so if the market doesn't perceive you as someone out there trying to sell or just another vendor, like my company is never perceived as a vendor at events. We're not perceived as vendors when we're writing. We're perceived as people who are subject matter experts who give away the information that people need. We go learn it all, we do surveys, we do tests, we run analytics, and then we share all that data. And yeah, our competitors are getting the data too, but again, if I go back to the whole idea of I prefer to be friends with my competitors, and you know, you got to be confident in yourself. You got to know that you can do it and continue to do it well, and that there's enough market space that it's okay to give away what you've got, and in exchange, everyone's going to end up winning.
Yes, indeed. I think it's a very good way to go. I'm just going to add just an observation because I think it's useful here too. Excuse me. I'm just going to talk briefly about what we did at Stone Temple Consulting, and because it's an example of a horizontal viewpoint, and that is that, okay, we talk about doing SEO, social media, content marketing, recovery from Google penalties, help with Panda, Penguin, you know, all these kinds of things, and it's really a broad spectrum of things. But what we really tried to do was establish ourselves as an expert in the overall big picture and, of which of those elements is the right mix for you, and also in getting the internal organization to understand it, understand what that mix is and why it was picked. So the specific activities that we focused on weren't so much it. It was this notion of how do you put together the program. Right, so I think it's just another example of a horizontal kind of niche, and it's, you know, ultimately it's worked out quite well for us.
Well, I mean, and that's exactly what it is that your niche at the end of the day is it's saying I've got a specific kind of knowledge base and expertise and a type of solution that fits a specific kind of need. And that's exactly what you did at Stone Temple. You know, that's what we've done at GNGF, and you know, there's company after company that's done the same thing and said, I've got a specific solution and a specific way to approach that problem, and that's why you hire me. And that's a differentiator, and I think that's important in building your business.
Totally. So we're pretty close to the top of the hour, and I think I don't see any open questions right at the moment. If somebody has one, fire it off fast, because I'm going to ask Jabez, as I like to do when we get to the end of the show, just to offer some closing thoughts as to what he sees, or you know, the advice you'd like to give to the audience, Jabez.
I always say test out a niche. So you know, you don't have to go all in every single time. You can treat a niche kind of like a project, and you know, take a little team, take some time, take a little project resources, and you know, do some work on defining the niche and defining how you're going to approach that niche. Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? What is the persona of that niche? What is my offering, my benefits? And then test it out, just like you would anything else. You're going to test your ads online. You're going to split test your website, split test your product offering to which target market, and try a niche out and see what kind of response you get, and really see if there's, now I mean, yeah, that takes some work, but it's worth testing the waters to see if that might be a viable opportunity for you to consider down the road.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, and now from my perspective, I just want to sort of reiterate what I think the top level value proposition of picking a niche is, and that is that it really allows you to get traction for your business, right? Because when we're talking and trying to advise people about picking a niche, we're assuming that it's a business that's not well established and already dominating something, right? We're trying to help you think about how you can move yourself forward. So really think about if you focus on one area and you make yourself or your business smarter about or the best solution in that area, bar none, then you will have your best chance of getting initial traction for your business. That's a really great place to focus on things. So many smart people have done this. I mean, Jabez highlighted, Amazon and Zappos. Well, those are, and Nordstrom's. Those are big honking companies that started with this very notion. So a very, very powerful way to go about things. So thanks everybody for all the great questions that we had. That's it for the Digital Marketing Excellence Show for today. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.